Today we will be solving equations. What do we mean by equations? Okay, solving equations. So by equations, we mean two things that are equal to each other. Okay, so for an example, 3 plus 4 equals 7 is an equation. We have something on this side equals something on this side. And in arithmetic, what we did was we were given the question, such as 3 times 6, and we solve for the answer. What is 3 times 6? Okay, and 3 times 6 is 18. Okay, so this is what we did in arithmetic. In algebra, what we do is that we are given the answer and we are given part of the question, but we have to solve for the other part. We don't know the first part, for example. So in this case, something times 6 equals 18. And if you are fairly comfortable with multiplication, you can kind of figure out, okay, what times 6 equals 18? And you can guess that 3 times 6 equals 18. Okay, but what if you can't figure this out? What if you can't figure out what times 6 equals 18? Well, there are two rules that you can follow. So two rules for solving equations. Today we will be solving equations. Now, solving equations is one of the most basic skills that you need in algebra. And what do we mean by equations? Equations are really any two things that are equal to each other. So for example, if I have 3 plus 4 equals 7, that's an equation. And the key for an equation is that equal sign. So something equals something. This is called an equation. Now, in arithmetic, we were given the question, such as 3 minus 2, and we were told to find the answer. What is 3 minus 2? And we would answer 1. This was in arithmetic. In algebra, we are actually given the answer. We're given the answer, and we need to find a part of the question. So we need to find a missing part. So 3 minus something, and we usually write a letter for something that we need to find. So let's put an n here. 3 minus n equals 1. This is an example of algebra question. Algebra. And we know that the answer is 1. We know that part of the question is 3. We need to find what n is. So what does n equal? 3 minus n equals 1. So 3 minus what gives you 1? And if you can use some mental math, or you can even use trial and error, you can find that 3 minus 2 actually gives you 1. So n has to equal 2 in this case. Okay, well, is there a better way or a more structured way of finding what n is? So for example, let's say we have n plus 4 equals 12. And what does n equal? What does n equal? Well, the key is we need to put this equation into a form of n equals something. We're trying to find what n is. Okay, and when you see an equation, you can kind of divide based on the equal sign. So we have the side on the left and the side on the right. These two are equal to each other. And we know a part, we know that the part on the right is 12. And we know one part of the part on the left. We know that 4 is being added to n. So what should n be so that when 4 is added to it, it equals 12? Well, some of you might have already figured out using mental math, but let me show you a more structured way of solving this. And we use structured ways. Structured ways are helpful because for harder questions, you can't really use your intuition to solve for the variable. So the key here is that we need to get rid of this 4 so that only n is left. We have the n here and a 4 here, so we need to get rid of that 4 somehow. And to get rid of the 4, it's actually plus 4 right here. 4 is being added. So we need to do the opposite to get rid of the 4, or to get rid of the plus 4. What is the opposite of plus 4? And you would know that plus 4, the opposite of plus 4 is minus 4. Okay, so if we do minus 4 here, then plus 4 and then minus 4, that's going to cancel with each other. That's just going to be 0. So we're just going to be left with n on the left side. But the key is, when we have something equals something, so let's say we have 5 equals 5, and let's say we've subtracted something from this side. So we've subtracted 3 here. Now this side becomes 2. Well, we know that that was true. 5 equals 5. But is this true? This is not true because we've subtracted something from one side and we left the other side the same. So in an equation, when you have an equal sign, you have to do the same thing to both sides of the equation. We have to do the same thing on this side and on this side. So when you subtract a 3 on this side, you have to subtract a 3 on this side as well. So that way we get, instead of a 5 here, we'll get 2 here. And then our equation will still be true. Okay, so when we subtracted 4 on this side of the equation, we also need to subtract 4 on the other side. Okay, so we'll have to do 12 minus 4 so that the equation is still true. And 12 minus 4 gives us 8. Okay, so on the left side, we're just left with n. On the right side, we're left with 8. So n is going to equal 8. And what I encourage you to do when you solve an equation like this is to always check your answer by putting this number back into the original equation. So put 8 back in there, and you're going to get 8 plus 4 equals 12. Is this true? On this side we have 12, and this side is also 12. So yeah, the equation is true. So that way you can check your answer. Let's say that you did something wrong here. You said that 12 minus 4 equals 7 instead of 8. Then when you're checking your answer, you'll get 7 plus 4 equals 12. And instead of getting a 12 on this side, you're going to get an 11 on this side. And you'll know that you did something wrong here because this is not true. 11 does not equal 12, right? So you can check your mistake by plugging it back into the original equation. So let me summarize what we did here into 2 basic rules. When solving, rules, or 2 rules when solving equations. The first thing is to do the opposite. Do the opposite of what's being done to the variable. Or if you're not comfortable with the word variable, You can think of this as letter, because we're solving for the letter in algebra. And the second thing is do the same thing to both sides of the equation. To both sides of the equation. So these are the two basic rules that you need to know when solving equations. So let's do some example problems and solve equations using this rule here. Let's say we have that n plus 4 equals 12 divided by 3. Okay, so first of all, can we simplify anything before we start solving for n? So we know that our final step should be n equals something. N equals what? And we need a couple of steps to get there. Can we simplify anything here? We can't really do anything to n plus 4 here, but we can simplify 12 divided by 3. Right? So we can simplify this. N plus 4 equals 12 divided by 3 is 4. So n plus 4 equals 4. And I encourage you to write the middle step here. Don't try to do this in your head. You can try and do it in your head once you get more comfortable, but at first I encourage you to write these out, or else it's going to be confusing. Okay, so now we have n plus 4 equals 4, and let's use our two rules here. So the first rule is do the opposite of what's being done to the variable. What is being done to the variable? This is the variable, by the way. This is the letter. What's being done to the variable? And we're adding 4 to the variable, right? We're adding 4 to the variable, so we have to do the opposite. Do the opposite. What is the opposite of plus 4? The opposite of plus 4 is minus 4. Okay, so we're doing minus 4. But our second rule says do the same thing to both sides of the equation. So we have to do minus 4 on this side as well. Okay, so on this side, the 4 and the plus 4 and the minus 4 will cancel. We're just going to get n. On the other side, we get 4 minus 4. What is 4 minus 4? That is 0. So we get our answer, n equals 0. Okay, and then again, you can check this by putting 0 for n into the original question. If you put 0 in for n, we get 0 plus 4 on this side. What is 0 plus 4? That is 4. We get 4 on this side. On this side, we get 12 divided by 3, which is also 4. And are these two equal to each other? And yes, they are equal to each other. So we can see that we've done our question correctly. Now let's try one last example with equations. Okay, let's have n times 5 equals 30 divided by 3. Okay, before we start solving for n, can we simplify anything? We can't really simplify anything here, but we can simplify 30 divided by 3. We can do 30 divided by 3. So on this side, we have n times 5. And on this side, 30 divided by 3 is 10. Okay, so now let's start solving for n using our two rules. The first thing is to do the opposite of what's being done to the variable. So to the variable, we are multiplying 5. What is the opposite of multiplying 5? The opposite of multiplication is division. So we have to divide by 5. And for our second rule, we have to do the same thing to this side. Divide by 5. So then this side will cancel. That's just going to cancel each other. So we're just left with n. On this side, we have 10 divided by 5, which is 2. So we get n equals 2. And again, we can check our answer. Put the 2 back into our original question. So if we have 2 times 5 here, on the left side, we're going to have 10. On the right side, 30 divided by 3, we're also going to have 10. So our answers are equal. So we did our question correctly.